I've never been the kind of person who gets rattled easily. Life, for the most part, has been predictable, even dull at times. But there was one encounter from my childhood that shattered that sense of normalcy and left me sleeping with one eye open for years. I'll call her Jessica. She was never really my friend, just an acquaintance, one of those people you cross paths with often enough to exchange a few words, but never anything more. Jessica had this strange aura about her, something almost otherworldly. She was frail-looking, ghostly pale, with ice-blue eyes and long, flowing white hair. She carried herself with an elegance that felt unnatural for a child. She rarely spoke, and when she did, it was always in this soft, measured tone that made you feel like she knew something you didn't. For years, we attended the same schools, from elementary through middle school. I never went out of my way to talk to her, but I never avoided her either. There was something oddly compelling about her presence, like a living porcelain doll you couldn't quite figure out. One particular weekend, I was at the local park, killing time on the swings when Jessica arrived with her little brother. I hadn't expected to see her there, but I didn't mind. We ended up playing together, running through the park, climbing the jungle gym, and laughing in a way that made me forget how unsettling she could be. Then we decided on a game of hide-and-seek. I was the seeker. It didn't take long for me to find her brother, but Jessica was different. I eventually spotted her sitting at the top of the park's massive frog slide, a towering structure with 3 different slides leading down. As soon as she saw me, she bolted up the ladder. I was about to follow when she stopped abruptly, turned to face me, and her entire demeanor changed. Her face, which had been calm and passive all day, twisted into something dark and unreadable. Her piercing blue eyes locked onto mine, and in a voice completely devoid of emotion, she said, "I'm going to kill you." The way she said it, so cold, so deliberate, sent an icy jolt of fear through my veins. My first instinct was that I had done something terribly wrong. My second instinct was to run. And I did. I ran until my lungs burned, hiding behind the slide, crouching in the shadows as if that could save me from whatever had just happened. I don't know how long I stayed there, but eventually, Jessica found me. Her expression had returned to its usual serene state, as if nothing had happened. She sat down beside me and, in that same eerie, measured tone, told me she had something important to confess. She told me she was a vampire. At first, I laughed. It was a nervous, uncertain kind of laugh, the kind that bubbles up when your brain refuses to process what's happening. But Jessica didn't flinch. Her gaze bore into me, unwavering, unblinking, as if she were waiting for me to come to terms with what she had just said. "You don't believe me," she murmured, tilting her head slightly, studying me. "That's fine. You will." Something about the way she said it made my stomach churn. It wasn't a boast or a joke, it was a promise. I wanted to get up, to run home and pretend this conversation never happened, but I was frozen. Something in her eyes held me there. She went on, describing things no normal kid should even think about. She spoke about the thrill of hunting, the taste of blood, the way the night called to her. She claimed she had been hiding it for years, that she moved from school to keep people from discovering her secret. She said she had chosen to tell me because she liked me. That word sent a chill down my spine. Then she leaned in closer and whispered something in my ear that turned my blood to ice. "I can see you, even when you're not here. I know what you do, where you go, who you talk to. And if you tell anyone what I've said, I'll come to your house in the middle of the night and make sure you never speak again." My breath caught in my throat. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. She sat back, watching me with an amused smile, as if daring me to call her bluff. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But all I could do was nod. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every rustling of the wind outside sent me into a panic. I kept imagining her pale face peering in through my window, those icy blue eyes watching, waiting. For years, I kept her secret, trapped in a nightmare of my own making. Even when she eventually moved away, the fear remained. The paranoia lingered, whispering in the back of my mind that she could still be out there, watching. I never told anyone what happened, at least, not until now. Even after Jessica moved away, her words continued to haunt me. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings, always checking over my shoulder, avoiding empty streets, and keeping my curtains shut tight at night. I told myself she was gone, that she had no real power over me, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. At school, I avoided conversations about her. My friends would sometimes bring her up, mentioning how strange she had always been, but I never contributed. I didn't want to risk speaking her name aloud, as if doing so would somehow summon her back into my life. The paranoia took root in my daily life. I stopped going to the park alone. I refused to be outside after sunset. Even when I was inside my own home, I felt vulnerable. The worst part was the nights, I would wake up suddenly, heart racing, feeling like something was watching me from the darkness. One night, I was jolted awake by a noise outside my window. My room was on the second floor, but that didn't stop the fear from gripping me. My first thought was Jessica. My second thought was that I was being ridiculous. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there. I forced myself to my feet and hesitated before pulling the curtain aside. The street was empty, the yard bathed in eerie moonlight. Nothing. No movement, no strange figures lurking in the shadows. But as I started to turn away, I saw it, a single set of footprints in the dew-covered grass, leading directly up to my window. My breath hitched. My body locked up, and I felt the same suffocating fear I had all those years ago when Jessica had first whispered her threat. I stared at those footprints for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing through every possibility. Had someone really been watching me? Or was my paranoia warping reality? The next morning, I searched for any signs of an intruder. The footprints were gone, either dried up in the morning sun or trampled by someone passing by. I told myself I had imagined the whole thing, that fear had played tricks on my mind. But deep down, I knew better. I could still hear her voice in my head, promising that she could see me, always watching, always knowing. And even though logic told me she was long gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, somehow, she still was. The years passed, but Jessica never truly left my mind. No matter how much I tried to rationalize what had happened, I could never fully dismiss the fear she had instilled in me. I carried it with me like a scar, invisible but ever-present. I eventually moved to another town for college, eager for a fresh start. The change of scenery helped, and for a while, I convinced myself that those memories were nothing more than childhood nightmares. But one night, that illusion shattered. I was studying late in my dorm room, the only light coming from my laptop screen. My roommate had gone home for the weekend, leaving me alone. The silence was comforting at first, but then I heard it, a soft tapping at the window. My stomach twisted into knots. My dorm was on the third floor. Slowly, I turned my head, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The window was closed, the blinds drawn. I stared, waiting, barely breathing. Then, just as I started convincing myself it was nothing, my phone lit up with a notification. A message from an unknown number. For simple words, I never forgot you. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. It wasn't possible. It had to be a prank, a coincidence. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I forced myself to move, to check the window. With slow, shaky hands, I pulled back the blinds. The night was empty, the streetlights casting long shadows across the campus grounds. No one was there. And yet, the feeling of being watched pressed down on me like a suffocating weight. That was the last time I ever heard from Jessica. The number never texted me again. I never saw any footprints, never felt that unshakable presence lurking just beyond my vision. But the paranoia never fully left me. Even now, years later, I find myself glancing at windows before I go to sleep. I hesitate before answering unknown calls. I avoid thinking about her for too long, as if acknowledging her memory might summon her back into my life. Was Jessica really what she claimed to be? Was she just an unhinged girl playing a game that went too far? I don't know. And I don't think I ever will. But one thing is certain. Somewhere out there, Jessica is still watching. Waiting.